Welcome to another Combat Mission Shock Force 2 video. It's time for the second mission of the Khabour Trail campaign, following a Canadian combat group as it secures river crossings on the way to El Hasaka in eastern Syria. In Mission 1, a light infantry company attacked the southern side of the town of Tal Tamir to prevent the Syrians from reinforcing the defense of the main bridge over the Khabour River. In this mission, happening at the same time, the mechanized infantry D Company, along with tanks from F Squadron, will be moving to secure the bridge crossing itself. The Canadian deployment area is in a small dip in the terrain, so it cannot see or be seen from the edge of the town itself. There's a few scattered low buildings that would have line of sight from the rooftops, but the ground level line of sight is blocked until roughly the field edges. There is, of course, the Khabour River running across the middle of the map, which is crossable by infantry but not by vehicles. Vehicles would have to cross along the bridge, located along the highway, splitting the map in the other direction. The mission briefing indicated that the bridge is likely to be mined or wired with IEDs. Along the bank of the river on the opposite side are 3 buildings. 1 2-story at the left edge and 2 1-story on the right. These would be great positions for Syrian recon, and I expect them to be occupied. Objective Huron is in the back left corner of the map, the approach from the river consisting of a series of fields and buildings separated by a couple of streets to cross. The objective itself is within the urban area of the town. Objective Micmac is in the rear middle of the map, spanning buildings on both sides of the highway. The approach on the right side of the highway is rather open and exposed, so an approach from the left might be preferable, even though it passes through several compounds ending in a large square of buildings. The map poses a major problem. There's a gigantic open space and clear view of buildings in the town that needs to be crossed. My vehicles will likely not be able to cross the river, and I cannot use any of the heavy firepower of the vehicles due to collateral damage. It looks like Objective Huron has a relatively protected approach along the left edge of the map, so 10 platoon will attempt to cross there. I expect the building on the river edge to be occupied, and likely the farm fields and buildings beyond that, but there should be plenty of cover all the way to the objective once the river is crossed. 11 platoon will cross to the left of the bridge. There's low walls on both sides of the river surrounding fields. The platoon should be able to move from wall to wall and stay mostly protected. Once across the river, I can smoke to get 11 platoon across to the town, then on to Objective Micmac. The vehicles are going to need to stay back, and since I expect the edge of the town to be filled with ATGMs, they will likely need to stay out of sight for most of the battle, as crossing the bridge is also not a good option due to the expected IEDs. Once the infantry start to clear the edge of town, I can try bringing them forward, but they might not have many targets they can engage at range with their machine guns only. I have intentionally not planned to enter the middle section of the town or the far right side of the battlefield. Since there's no objectives in the middle of the town, I'd like to avoid as much urban combat as possible. As to the far right of the map, it doesn't look like it offers any good approaches to the objective, and there's no buildings there. If there happens to be a Syrian presence, they would be in trenches and foxholes, and I can freely hammer them with air power and artillery. It's going to be another urban slog for this mission. In the opening stages of the battle, I only have some recon elements on the map, which does limit my initial options. I don't have the forces to mount any sort of offensive yet, so it's time to poke around a bit and get some soldiers on rooftops to observe the town. I do briefly advance some of the recon vehicles, but since I expect ATGMs in the town, I don't want to expose them for very long. The close air support from the aircraft and the helicopters do not find anything to shoot at in the open spaces. It seems like the Syrians are entirely within the town. At around the 5-minute mark, the first wave of reinforcements arrive, a pair of Leopard 2A6s from F Squadron. While I'd rather not test it out, unlike the Leopard C1s that the Canadians also field, these tanks should be able to shrug off almost anything the Syrians can fire at them from the front. In addition, D Company's 10 platoon has arrived, which is mounted in Lab 3s. The Lab 3s have thin armor and won't stop much more than small arms fire, but they are armed with the very effective Bushmaster autocannon. They're capable of shredding infantry and light vehicles, however using them to fire into buildings will certainly cost me collateral damage points. As they begin to move towards the left flank, of course they experience some traffic issues, and they take a moment to sort themselves out. The Leopards have moved into keyhole positions between the buildings first, in case there's any ATGM launchers that can see the staging location. So far, nothing has been spotted in the town by any of the recon units. As the infantry dismount, one of the Leopards is ordered to fire some machine gun rounds into the very suspicious building on the opposite bank of the river. In advance of 10 platoon, a forward observer team is slowly making their way across the field to get a closer look at the building. One of the recon labs is positioned farther back where it might be able to spot anything inside with thermals. Several minutes have gone by with the forward observers and lab spotting nothing across the river. 10 platoon has begun their advance across the fields. The first squad and a machine gun team cross closer to the middle of the field and take a position behind a stone wall. A second squad is positioned on top of a small hill nearby, slowly creeping forward towards a small depression ahead where they can find better cover. The final team of the platoon remains in reserve for now. Around 20 minutes have passed and 11 platoon has arrived on the field along with another 2 tanks from F Squadron, this time a Leopard 2A6 and the much later armoured Leopard C2. The platoon heads over to the same staging area 10 platoon used and dismounts there in order to proceed across the fields on foot. I'm still confident that there are ATGMs lurking in the town and don't want to risk any vehicles in the open yet. The Apaches have come in for another sweep of the area, but this time I set the attack zone to cover a bit of the town. They spot something on a rooftop and blast it with a Hellfire missile.
Ready to engage. Roger, cleared hot.
An explosive shell lands near the forward observers on the left flank. The offender is an SPG-9 set up on the roof of the building the Leopard has been firing into. The Canadian response is swift as multiple vehicles and tanks blast the SPG-9. This draws the attention of a Syrian ATGM team which fires a missile, striking a recon lab and destroying it. The ATGM team is likewise spotted, and a LAV that was already moving forward due to a misplaced hull-down order engages as the team appears to pack up the launcher and attempt to flee. There goes some more of my collateral damage points. Since the LAV was advancing due to a badly placed hull-down order, and I have confirmation there are indeed ATGMs in the town, I really don't want it to be out in the open, so it's ordered to pop smoke. With the suspicious building seemingly now empty with the SPG-9 team destroyed, 10 platoon is free to advance again. All 3 squads of the platoon plus the machine gun team will regroup in the dried up riverbed and prepare to cross the river. The Hornets can be heard circling overhead, but they still haven't spotted anything in the open space between the far bank and the town. Perhaps the building isn't as empty as expected, as one of the Apaches puts a Hellfire missile into it. A fresh coat of paint after the battle and you'd hardly notice that damage.
Ready to engage.
On the far left, a 2-man rifle team has moved all the way to the riverbank without encountering any hostiles. With 10 platoon having shifted to the dried riverbed just off camera, 11 platoon has moved up to the stone wall to observe the town and cover the middle of the battlefield. If anything from the edge of town attempts to fire on 10 platoon when they cross the river, 11 platoon should be able to respond and give them covering fire. Cautiously, 10 platoon advances towards the river. They're on a hunt order, so at the first sign of enemy contacts, they'll go to ground. One of the Leopard 2s has moved up to support the crossing, while using the buildings to shield its side armor from any firing position. Once the entire platoon has made it to the riverbank, the squad split into teams, with 4-man assault teams crossing the river, while the remaining half of the light machine guns open fire on the buildings across the river. As the assault teams begin to make it across, machine gun fire starts coming in from a rooftop farther back in the town. Thanks to the gunner being several hundred meters away, the Canadians don't take any casualties. The range involved will make suppressing this position in order to advance a bit difficult, until the Leopard 2 makes the spot before I can set it to target light and solves the problem, at the cost of some more building damage. With the machine gun position taken care of, the assault teams from 10 platoon finish the crossing and make their way up the opposite bank. Even with the rest of the platoon suppressing the buildings here, I don't want to send them charging in blind, so they're going to proceed cautiously to the top of the bank and get a close look into the buildings before going inside. Having found nothing but corpses in the 3 buildings, the second half of the platoon ceases fire and begins to cross the river to join the other half. The assault teams occupy the buildings, with some of them taking the upper floors of the 2-story building to get a better vantage point. While 10 platoon has successfully secured a foothold on the opposite bank, they are already preparing for the next obstacle, a dense field of crops leading to another cluster of buildings. Since the left flank is now secure, 11 platoon can move up to the next row of stone walls closer to the river. Once they're in position, they will cross the river, aiming to get to the stone walls surrounding the fields on the opposite bank as quickly as possible. There's still been remarkably few contacts in the town. I was expecting crossing the river to be heavily contested, but the Syrians appear to be letting the Canadian forces cross with limited resistance. Either the Syrian force is much smaller than I expect, or they're hiding deeper in the town and the urban combat will be much harder than crossing the river. A squad of pioneers from A Company arrived in the last reinforcement wave. They dismounted and ran up to the bridge, which according to the briefing is likely wired with IEDs. I don't know if pioneers can detect and disarm an IED like they can mines, but I'm going to try anyway. The squad is split in two in order to move slowly across the bridge in the hopes that they will see something and be able to disarm it, but so far it doesn't seem likely. 11 platoons' first teams cross the river with no issues, but then a burst of machine gun fire comes from the town. It appears to be aimed at the front team, but an unlucky ricochet catches a soldier in the rear squad. A nearby Leopard 2 is given a target light order to use its machine gun to return fire on the Syrian machine gunner, and a few infantry teams join in with a couple bursts of their own, but I may need to risk building damage and use the cannon again due to the long range being problematic once more. 10 Platoon has begun their advance through the crop fields. This seems like an excellent place to stumble into some Syrian foxholes and get ambushed, so I have them advancing slowly with the teams spread out and staggered. A Leopard 2 is firing at some of the buildings beyond the field with its machine gun. The platoon makes it through the fields without encountering any issues and takes a position behind a stone wall where they can observe the buildings ahead. After a couple minutes of watching the buildings and not finding any contacts, 10 Platoon pushes forward to secure the area. At this point, it's around 45 minutes into the battle. The river has been crossed in multiple points, and there still hasn't been any significant Syrian presence. Where are they?
Okay, Sergeant.
11 Platoon has advanced to the last row of stone walls before they need to cross the open to reach the town itself. They're holding there for now, but spotting rounds are starting to come down in the area, so 11 Platoon may need to move quickly. 10 Platoon has cleared all the buildings immediately beyond the crop fields and found them empty. The pair of Leopards work to suppress the next set of buildings across the street so some assault teams can cross the road. They make it into the buildings, and once again find them empty. The first half of the Pioneer team moved to the right to secure a small building near the water, while the second team has shifted left to support 11 Platoon with demo charges. An RPG shot comes their way but falls very short, but it does reveal the shooter. A nearby Leopard 2 handles it. Back on 10 Platoon's side, the platoon has secured the first buildings across the street. The second Pioneer squad has joined them and is preparing to blast a hole in the wall to allow access to the next set of buildings. It might have been a better idea to blast through one of the buildings itself so the troops don't have to run through a bottleneck while exposed, but I'm still trying to minimize collateral damage. With some of the platoon firing at what they can see through the gap, the rest begins to move through. The advancing soldiers come under fire from a window that the supporting teams are not able to see, so the Syrians inside are not suppressed. Luckily, the Syrians miss their shots and are quickly overwhelmed by the advance, take casualties, and the remainder surrender.
Assault!
10 Platoon quickly secures the rest of the buildings and prepares to cross another road. A mortar spotting round lands on the road and shrapnel kills a soldier. It looks like 10 Platoon can't wait to scout the area. They're going to need to keep moving. Meanwhile, 11 Platoon hasn't spotted anything in the town outskirts yet, and with spotting rounds falling near them too, they call in some smoke so they can prepare to cross into the town. 10 Platoon has advanced into the mosque and is now in sight of Objective Huron, where they finally encounter a significant Syrian presence. The Syrians are set up both on the upper and lower floors of a row of buildings across the street from the mosque, and a fierce firefight quickly begins.
Shot, over. Intermission. Shot, out. Flash, over. Flash, out. Roger, fire for effect.
Get down!
Flash, over.
Despite some close calls with RPGs, there's only one wounded soldier on the Canadian side as the exchange begins to quiet down. It's hard to tell if the Syrians are suppressed or dead. 10 Platoon will need to get closer to find out. At the same time 10 Platoon advances into the mosque, 11 Platoon makes use of the smoke to run across the open ground between their current position and the outskirts of the town. Since the Lavs all have thermals, they can see through the smoke, and hopefully the Syrians cannot. The vehicles move into the open and fire machine guns at as many buildings as they can. The first of 11 Platoon makes it to the outskirt buildings safely, but immediately spots Syrians in the next buildings in. A Lav has been firing into the building, so the Syrians are already partially suppressed, which allows the Canadians to get into position, make the spot, and start inflicting casualties. Slightly to the right of that engagement, a squad enters a long row of buildings and takes a burst of fire which downs a soldier. The rest of the squad quickly eliminates the Syrian team. The battle at Objective Huron continues. While the Syrians are still there, they've been heavily suppressed and the Canadians clearly have the upper hand at the moment. In order to decisively end this, troops are going to need to get closer. It looks like there's an opportunity to advance along the tall wall, so a team from the Pioneers begins to make their move as the rest of the platoon suppresses the positions. The wall will provide cover from the upper floors of the buildings they are approaching, and as long as the building on the far left remains suppressed, the Pioneers should be able to get close enough. As they come around the corner, they come under some fire, and while they get a few shots of their own off, they end up getting pinned at close range while rather exposed. This is not a great position to be in. Luckily, the Syrians are also now pinned, so the Pioneers will have a chance to recover. The base of fire is doing a good job of keeping the Syrians on the left pinned, so they are unable to fire upon the Pioneer squad. With their morale recovered, the Pioneers begin to pour fire onto the Syrians in front of them. Back with 11 Platoon, the smoke is mostly cleared and a few Syrian stragglers pop up across the courtyard. 11 Platoon's command squad takes a casualty before the Syrians disappear again. The Lavs are continuing to put machine gun fire into every building that stands in the way of the Canadian advance. So far, nothing has tried to shoot back at them. Over an hour of the battle has now passed, with 45 minutes remaining. The Canadians have advanced slowly and cautiously, but are now starting to encounter stiff resistance. While time is starting to run short, 10 and 11 Platoon are both positioned to strike at their respective objectives. The Pioneer squad on the far right has advanced across the open and occupied a small building and now finds themselves in a precarious situation. An RPG shot has taken out 2 members of the squad and they are now taking fire from multiple angles with no nearby support. Some Lavs are trying to move into position to support them, but the road leading to the bridge is on a causeway, so it will take them time to get to where they can provide covering fire. Another RPG shot comes in, striking their building but causing no casualties this time. This advance is definitely something that I'm coming to regret. Back at Objective Huron, the Pioneers supporting 10 Platoon make their move across the street, as it appears the Syrians in the opposing building have all been killed. They get inside and proceed to the back windows, where they uncover a hiding Syrian. He hasn't surrendered, and the Pioneers don't give the opportunity. I need to get more troops up to reinforce the Pioneers, so one of the squads from the mosque base of fire moves up. A bit of a running gun battle occurs as some of the Syrians the squad was previously firing at recovers enough to poke their heads out. Meanwhile, the Pioneers continue to sweep the buildings. They find that the Syrian squad in the upper floor has been suppressed by long-range machine gun fire from the Lavs, but they don't appear to have taken any casualties. Until the Pioneers have found them, that is. While one Syrian tries to flee, he isn't successful, and the entire squad is quickly wiped out. The reinforcing squad from the mosque has arrived and moves into a building, taking fire from the second floor of another building and losing a soldier. The rest of the squad returns fire, with the pioneers also coming in to help. Despite having a superior force in size, training, and equipment, in dense urban areas like this, these small groups of Syrians are able to slowly grind down my force a couple soldiers at a time. Some well-placed rifle grenades seem to have finished the job here. There's only one building left in Objective Huron with a Syrian presence that I know of. Another squad from the base of fire in the mosque moves up to a corner of low walls, while the remaining squad of 10 platoon stays in the upper floor to continue providing the base of fire. The pioneers and the 10 platoon squad that was with them shifts over, allowing multiple close-range angles on the remaining Syrians. One of them surrenders, but the final Syrian is determined to keep fighting. Eventually, he's taken down and Objective Huron is secured by 10 platoon. 11 platoon has about 40 minutes to take the remaining objective. The Pioneer team with them blasts a hole in a wall to give them a better path to advance, as the alternatives are to go up roads exposed to unsecured buildings on both sides. As the team clears away from the hole, they come under fire through a gap and one of the pioneers is killed. The squad from 11 platoon spots the Syrians and opens fire, wiping out most of the squad. It seems going through the middle of the buildings might not be any easier than going up the roads. Having cleared one side of the buildings through the wall, the squad shifts to the building on their right to get a look at the buildings on the left of the gap that they couldn't previously see. Sure enough, gunfire starts coming from the left. These buildings are occupied too. Another soldier goes down and most of the squad is pinned. The squad stays down for a tense few moments before recovering enough to deal with the Syrian threat. Machine gun team has gone into the second floor of a building to get a look up the road I was trying to avoid by going up the middle. They spot a Syrian in a building at the end of the road, who seems rather unconcerned by the number of bullets flying past him. The machine gun firing has attracted some attention, and some shots come towards the team, but a rifle grenade hit makes the contact disappear. Once again, I rely on machine gun fire from the lavs to help suppress Syrian positions. The machine guns aren't nearly as effective as the Bushmasters, but they are still helping to relieve some of the pain of urban combat. The machine gun team has attracted even more attention and is now being fired upon by 3 different Syrian positions. With the buildings beyond the wall secured, more of 11 platoon is able to advance and provide at least some support to the machine gun team by working to destroy the spotted Syrians. The angle of fire isn't great, but they manage to inflict casualties anyway. The pioneers that had pushed too far forward have been laying low for some time now, while they wait for 11 platoon to catch up. Now that 11 platoon has made it forward, some of the Syrians engaging the machine gun team have been spotted by the pioneers, so they move to engage. The range is a little bit far for their rifles, so it's not terribly effective, but at least it's helping to suppress the Syrians. This does reveal the pioneers to a Syrian off to their right, which by the sounds of it is a single sniper who starts firing on the squad. One of the lavs spots the sniper and begins to put machine gun rounds in the building, but it's going to be hard to hit one Syrian from this range. I had initially wanted to avoid the entire center of the town and focus only on the 2 objectives, but now that I'm in the fight, it seems like the middle sections of the town have pretty good coverage of the approaches to the objectives. They're going to need to be cleared. One squad from 11 Platoon is advancing cautiously between some buildings where Syrian contact has occasionally popped up, while a squad from 10 Platoon moves over to assist. 10 Platoon may have secured their objective, but there'll be no rest for them. The plan is to hit the building with suspected Syrian squads from two sides at roughly the same time. The squad from 11 Platoon will enter the buildings directly, while the squad from 10 Platoon will line up outside and look through the windows, and hopefully hit the Syrians in the flank. It almost works. The two squads are in position when a Syrian pops up and the squad from 11 Platoon opens fire, but the squad from 10 Platoon can't see past the first building and is unable to engage. 11 Platoon's squad manages to avoid taking casualties and loses sight of the contact after a brief exchange of fire. The two squads take advantage of the pause in fire, and 10 Platoon squad has entered the building, while 11 Platoon squad has split into two fire teams and occupied both buildings in their area. The Syrians were pinned and recover, only to find themselves now nearly surrounded. With the Syrian position at the end of the road eliminated, one of 11 Platoon squads moves out to try and get closer range and a better angle on one of the Syrian squads that has been firing on the machine gun team. Having cleared the rest of the buildings, and with the Syrians' attention fixed on the other squad, the 10 Platoon and 11 Platoon squads are able to cross the road, which causes the remaining Syrians to surrender. As the two squads push into the buildings, the larger two-story building in the back reveals more Syrians, who are quickly dealt with. The Syrian position at the end of the road has been quiet for some time now, with multiple Lavs putting machine gun fire into them. I had assumed the Syrians inside were killed by the Lavs, but when I move a squad in, they find the Syrians have surrendered. The squad moves through that building into the next area, a square of buildings with a courtyard in the middle. As this square is one of the major features within Objective Micmac, I expect it to be well defended like Objective Huron was. The squad quickly comes under fire from several buildings and does their best to return fire before getting pinned. At this point, I'm debating if they should try and hold on for help to arrive or if I need to start following them back. There's 30 minutes left on the clock, and there isn't a lot of help nearby. The 10 Platoon squads in Huron are nearly out of ammo. The 10 Platoon and 11 Platoon squads in the middle don't have a clear path to Micmac. And the Pioneer Squad and Exo Squad on the right can't advance because the sniper hasn't been dealt with yet. This means that clearing the square will fall on two squads from 11 Platoon and a Pioneer fire team. With one squad and the Pioneers still holding the left side of the square, the second squad attempts to move to the right side of the square. I should have popped smoke in the gap, but I assumed since I had squads in the left side that the entire left side was clear. A deadly mistake. The squad only loses one soldier, then returns fire. With attention focused on this squad, the squads in the left buildings rush forward and engage in a close-range firefight where they overwhelm and destroy the Syrians. The two squads in the middle of the town continue to move forward with the hopes that they can clear the road and move towards Objective Micmac. As they clear another set of buildings, they come under fire from across the street and another heavy firefight breaks out. One of the squads has a soldier wounded but not downed, and the Syrians also begin to take losses. Shortly after, the remaining Syrians across the street surrender, and the squads are able to cross the street into their buildings. At this point, most of the Syrians in the square have been killed or have surrendered as well. The troops in the square are slowly making their way to the rear of the square so that they can sweep right to clear the rest of the objective area. There's a few Syrian stragglers that pop up, but they are easily dealt with. Although, I would have preferred that they don't fire an anti-tank weapon into someone's house. The The squads that have been pushing through the middle have committed to continuing that path, where they will swing to the right eventually and clear the back half of Objective Micmac. They're still encountering scattered Syrian squads as they move. Further highlighting how dangerous urban combat can be, even against a small number of hostiles, an RPG shot lands a direct hit on a building and kills 2 soldiers. The RPG gunner appears to fire some shots with his pistol before being overwhelmed with the help of some of the squads from the square in Micmac. It looks like the road is now clear, so a squad moves out into the road in order to get into the objective area. An RPG shot is fired from across the highway that splits the middle of the objective, missing by a wide margin, but considering I just lost 2 troops to an RPG shot, I don't want to take chances with this road. The shooter is spotted, and squads in the square engage, which reveals a second Syrian position on the other side of the highway. I have troops able to fire through a keyhole position, which will hopefully be enough because crossing the highway itself is something I'd rather not do at this point. There's not a lot of cover, and all of my squads are starting to run low on ammunition. I've moved a squad up onto a rooftop, making sure it's one with a low wall to give them cover, so they can assist in engaging the Syrians across the highway. Fortunately for the Canadians, the Syrians have had enough and the remaining force surrenders without forcing me to cross the highway. The Syrians have lost a total of 102 men across dead, wounded, and surrendered, while I've lost 14 and 1 lav. 14 might seem like a small number of losses, but 12 of them were infantry and a lot of my force was vehicle crew. Losing 12 was around 15% of my infantry force, which is much higher than I would have liked and won't be sustainable for very many missions. That's it for Mission 2 of the Khabour Trail campaign. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.